Our lead story of the day is regarding the Supreme Court hearing the case of Joe Biden's student loan cancellation plan. And we got video footage of Randy Weingarten on the steps of the Supreme Court screaming to the skies, whining like a little baby, as you'd expect from a leftist, saying that it's not fair that people have to pay off their student loans. Let that one sink in. We got all the details for you. But before we jump into all that, make sure you head over to our brand new website, baldbrad.com, which is a one-stop shop for y'all. Link is in the description. You can catch our podcast there. You can watch our YouTube videos, read our blog posts. We got it all for you. And if you didn't hear the big reveal over the weekend, we also got a book launching March 13th on Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble's, titled Trojan Horse: How the Left is Destroying America. Folks, this book completely obliterates and destroys the progressive left and the Democrat Party's ideology, because it is their ideology that is going to destroy this country from the inside out, much in the same way of how the Greeks sent in the Trojan horse during the Trojan War to destroy Troy from the inside out. The progressive left's ideology is going to do the same thing with the United States, unless we recognize it and equip ourselves with the information we need to dismantle and destroy their narrative, their ideology, and the book does just that. If you love Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Andrew Klavan, Matt Walsh, the guys from the Daily Wire, if you love Charlie Kirk, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, all the big conservatives, Republicans, you're going to love this book, folks. It's a must read. You could buy the ebook now and pre-order a paperback and hardcover version as well by heading over to Barnes & Noble's or Amazon or clicking the link on our website. Make sure you pre-order yourself a book today. Again, it releases March 13th. And if that wasn't enough, we also got a store here for y'all. We got merch. If you go again to our store on baldbrad.com, you can get yourself a t-shirt right now. These shirts are awesome. They're awesome quality, and they look really sick, folks. We got our own image. We got our own setup. We got mugs. We got hats. We got stickers. We got hoodies. We got it all, folks. Head over to baldbrad.com if you haven't already. Get yourself the book. Get yourself some merchandise, some swagger, and look good and look like an American patriot, because let's be honest, folks, Bald Brad Show viewers are American patriots, and we uphold the values of this great nation. Again, head over to baldbrad.com or get yourself a copy at Amazon or Barnes & Noble's. Well, with that being said, we got conservative justices on the Supreme Court taking aim at President Joe Biden's plan to cancel some $400 billion, yes, folks, billion with a B, in student loans, and sticking taxpayers with the bill. See, now you're responsible for somebody else's debt that they took out voluntarily. Regardless of a national emergency, they voluntarily took out that risk, but now that risk is put onto you and I. Isn't that just lovely? Implying congressional approval may be required. In August, Biden announced that the Department of Education, under the Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, would cancel up to $20,000 in unpaid loans for 40 million borrowers. The administration claimed the plan, legal under the HEROES Act of 2003, enacted during the Iraq War, to offer relief to service members and their families by temporarily freezing their student loans during times of war or a national emergency. And so what the Democrats are doing here is they're taking this 2003 act, the HEROES Act, that was for our veterans to temporarily freeze their student loans because they're serving our country in war. They're trying to take that and go, well, there was a pandemic, there was COVID-19, a national emergency, so let's wipe out their debt, which is crazy, absolutely crazy. I'd also like to point out, Joe Biden said that the pandemic's over. There's no national emergency anymore. It's all done and kaput, but we're still trying to push this through, which was a question by Jackie Heinrich many weeks ago to Karine Jean-Pierre. And Karine Jean-Pierre was being clear with all of us, which she wasn't. We never got an answer, by the way, for that. Well, Chief Justice John Roberts pointed out that in 2020, the High Court blocked the Trump administration from eliminating the Obama-era Dreamers program, insisting he had to get Congress's approval. Justice Clarence Thomas said that Cardona's order runs into Congress's appropriations authority. The issues before the court in Biden v. Nebraska are whether 6 states have standing to challenge the plan and whether the plan exceeds Cardona's statutory authority or it's arbitrary. Meaning, does the Secretary of Education or the Education Secretary have the right and the legal authority to do this in conjunction with utilizing the HEROES Act when there is no national emergency anymore, quoted by the president numerous times? But, again, this Democrat Party, they want to take, and never give, and always just steal from your pocketbook and put it into somebody else's. And in other words, folks, it's just a redistribution of wealth at the end of the day. That's all it is. And they've been talking about doing that for decades. Well, the HEROES Act permits the Secretary of Education to waive or modify student loan requirements for people residing or working in a disaster area related to war or a national emergency. U.S. Solicitor General argued for the Biden administration that the COVID pandemic qualifies as such a circumstance. Maybe it did before slightly, but boy, oh boy, is that some twisting of words there for that HEROES Act. But we're no longer in a pandemic. And get this, the authors of the legislation of the HEROES Act of 2003 named the Higher Education Relief Opportunities for Students, hence HEROES Act, Congressman Howard Buck and John Klein, a 25-year veteran of the Marines, never intended their legislation to be used as a means of blanket cancellation of loans. The HEROES Act never authorized loan forgiveness. Again, let me repeat that. The HEROES Act never authorized loan forgiveness, but did give the Secretary of Education authority to freeze loan payments, which they did do under the pandemic for students whose education was interrupted by military service. I mean, this is frustrating, you guys, because you really see the overreach and the power of the federal government trying to sit there and steal from you, actively steal from you right now, and switching legislation to fit a certain narrative that they want. Because look, they made a bad choice of taking out a student loan and going into a major and receiving a job that they're not able to pay off that loan. And by the way, when I was listening to this video clip that we're going to play in just one moment, I was watching it, but I was also reading the live chat of all these people going, I've been paying off my loan for 18 years and it hasn't gone down. Why is that my fault? You took out the loan voluntarily. Why am I having to pay for it? I didn't take out the damn loan. By the way, I took out a $60,000 student loan and I paid off in 2 years. I didn't ask for anybody for a handout. I went and worked multiple jobs to pay it off. But this is what people want. They always want a handout. Always want a handout. I mean, really see from JFK's time, ask not what you can do for what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I mean, it really shows you the swing in the Democrat Party of how far left they've gone. I mean, JFK's Democrat would be a centrist now, put it that way. Well, Biden's plan violated the HEROES Act in several ways, according to a brief filed by the Pacific Legal Foundation. In addition to the act not authorizing complete student loan forgiveness, it also bars any action that could impair the integrity of the student financial assistance programs, the foundation argued. The brief also noted that the Biden policy makes no effort to isolate borrowers who can show they suffered economic harm as a direct result of the pandemic, and pointed out there has been a moratorium on payments since it began. And I would like to also point out they did the same thing with the COVID-19 stimulus checks. They passed it out to everybody. There was no criteria really for it. I believe the criteria, what was a certain level of income threshold based on a prior year's tax return for some of the checks that were offered. But other than that, not everybody needed a check. Only some people did, meaning we just shelled out trillions of dollars, inflated the economy, and now we're dealing with this whole inflation crisis, a 40-year high that we haven't seen in 4 decades. But, you know, they're going to do this whole thing here again, just passing out money. Basically, it is redistribution of wealth and passing out checks like they're hotcakes, except you're doing it in the form of relieving somebody of their debt, of which they took out, again, voluntarily. Well, let's go to the clip here of Randi Weingarten, the one that was the head of, I think she either was or is still the head of like one of the biggest teachers unions in the United States, screaming to the skies, complaining about all this stuff, saying how it's not fair. I mean, she looks like a high schooler complaining to their parents about not even being able to get a cell phone or going to their friend's birthday party or the school dance or whatever it may be. Just watch it. Let's just check it out.
Ends meet. Without further ado, let's give it up for Becky Weingarten.
Are you ready to cancel student debt? Oh no, the judges can't hear you, particularly the judge that actually had student debt. Are you ready to cancel student debt? Do we need the Supreme Court to do the right thing? Do we need the Supreme Court to do the legal thing? So look, you know, I'm a school teacher, and I'm also a lawyer. But normally what happens is that when the government has the authority to get something done, like the Secretary of Education has the authority under the Higher Education blah, 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 blah law.
Wow, stellar lawyer there, huh? The Higher Education, blah, 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 law. By the way, we just read you everything about the HEROES Act and what it was utilized going back to 2003 for military service members that are in war to temporarily basically stall their student loans until they get back from war for serving war. Last time I checked, none of these people were in war. None of them were in the Iraq war. There was a national emergency, but like I said, that was for military servicemen. We just talked about the people that wrote the legislation. It was never for a blanket cancellation or cancellation just in general. But now, you know, again, they have the authority to do all this. Somehow they got the authority. As to when they got the authority, I'm not sure, but they're going to claim that they have it, and so that everybody else gets their debt relieved and all this other nonsense.
When they have the authority to get something done, it doesn't get here. It never gets here. Because what happens is the lower courts say, here's the law, here's the authority, let's get it done. So this is my question for all of us. And I think Representative Presley said it as well. We watched what the cases were last year. So we're here outside, but we are wondering, is the Supreme Court going to follow the law, or is the Supreme Court going to follow corporate interests? And I know we're wondering that. And what I'm asking you to do, regardless of what happens today, is keep hope alive.
How about regardless of whatever happens, you give good financial advice of pay off your loans? How about not take out debt that you can't pay for and expect somebody else to pay for it? How about that for some advice? How about not going to a four-year university knowing that you're not going to be able to pay it? Or how about getting a major that's going to be able to pay off that debt, not going into underwater basket weaving or lesbian dance theory and expecting $100,000 when you took out $200,000 of student loans? I mean, it is so baffling here, the lack of personal awareness, the lack of personal responsibility for someone's actions, and it's always somebody else's fault. So now it's your and I's fault here, and we have to pay for it and inherit that risk of somebody else being a knucklehead and not assessing that risk in the first place of them taking out a loan and being able to pay it off or not being able to pay it off. That's how this all works now. Again, it's going to start with student loans. What's stopping the government from having that trickle down into, well, let's pay off people's mortgages now. Oh, let's pay off people's auto loans. You know, where does it stop? Where does it stop?
We know, and we say, remember I said I'm a school teacher. We've said to young adults, and there are many here, I love all these caps. We've said to young adults over and over and over again, go to college, go to college, go to college, go to college. How many of us have heard that?
Not many people.
That's all. How many of us have said that? How many of us have gone to college? But part of this bargain is this.
So because in school, they heard a bunch of teachers, again, I'm an educator myself, say, oh, go to a four-year, go to a four-year, go to a four-year, which, by the way, I don't preach. I say if you want to go to a four-year, and that's what you want to do, go to a four-year. But please know that there are a lot of trade schools that you can go to and not go to a four-year university and still make six figures. You can become an electrician. You can become a carpenter, whatever it may be, a welder, right? Work for the union. Like, you can make six figures, a lot of money without ever going to college, taking out massive debt and then not being able to pay it off. Or you go to a trade school, not take out any debt or maybe a small amount of debt and make a lot of money and good money. But, you know, again, oh, well, you know, you got to blame somebody else, right? So now we're blaming the teachers or blaming some other person that told you to go to 4 years. So you followed suit and took out massive amount of debt. It's such nonsense. You took out, not you, Paul Bradshaw, the listeners, but whoever took out the debt, they did it. Not me, not you.
If we go to college and we stay in college, we need to actually make sure that it's affordable, that it doesn't take everything and everything that our families can do. And frankly, that is what this machinery was supposed to be about. We go to college, we take out student loans that were supposed to be affordable, and we're supposed to be able to deal and thrive and pay our student loans back in an affordable way. But what has happened?
I would like to point out, I was never guaranteed that deal. This is all news to me, by the way. You don't have to go to an expensive university. You don't have to go to Harvard or Yale or a private university. You know, I went to USC, which is a private university, but that was a personal goal of myself, was to go to a nice, acclaimed personal university. I could have gone to, I don't know, Long Beach State or Cal State Fullerton or a cheaper school, which I did do for my bachelor's, And I came out of college with no debt, by the way. But if I wanted to go to a expensive private school like USC, I had to take out student loans, but I didn't have to go to that school. I could have just gone to, again, for my master's, I could have gone to Long Beach State or a cheaper school. I chose to do that, and I didn't expect a handout. So because you sat there and made the wrong choices to go to a certain university, now we're all responsible for that debt of your decisions?
What happened is that they have become unaffordable. They've become unaffordable. They've not people, and when people make a mistake or when they don't pay the exact amount, all of a sudden one is in foreclosure and one is in all sorts of other things, and they become even more unaffordable. And so that is why President Biden said, we are going to deal with that. As we deal with the end of the pandemic, we're going to deal with that. We're not going to start student debt again without actually making a down payment of it. And the Secretary of Education had the right to do it. And frankly, and this is what really pisses me off, during the pandemic, we understood that small businesses were hurting. And we helped them. And it didn't go to the Supreme Court to challenge it. Big businesses were hurting, and we helped them, and it didn't go to the Supreme Court to challenge it. All of a sudden, when it's about our students, they challenge it, the corporations challenge it, the student loan lenders challenge it. That is not right. That is not fair, and that is what we are fighting as well when we say cancel student debt. This is about the people, and it is about the people's future, and it is about all of your futures. So that's why when I started and said, whatever they do, regardless of what they do, we need to keep this fight up. That is how we make good with the students of America.
She is out of breath, man. I mean, again, it's so, if you had to picture a progressive leftist, you would picture somebody with short hair, right? Slightly overweight. I'm not trying to just hound on her, but screaming and whining on the steps of the Supreme Court or out there in public, which we've all seen video clips of. I mean, this is literally the epitome of somebody going, it's not fair. It's not fair that we're not getting our student loans paid off or relieved. Like, where do you come off on just expecting things from the American taxpayer for a decision that you made before the pandemic? Maybe there was some sort of tiny conversation that could be had that you took out student loans during the pandemic. Maybe. But you also had the government shut down businesses, shut down the entire economy without any relief. And by the way, the student debt was frozen during COVID, meaning there was nothing happening with it. It wasn't like he's accumulating interest. It wasn't like your debt was increasing over that time. It just was a blanket stop on it for the most part. But, you know, hey, again, we're all responsible for this stuff. This is how it works. Democrats can never take personal responsibility. Prime example, Joe Biden. Joe Biden still in the last 2 years has done nothing wrong. He hasn't made a single mistake as president. Just ask Karine Jean-Pierre. We cover it here every single week on the Bald Brad Show with the White House press briefings. But let me know what you think about that one in the comment section below or the live chat, because I'm sure you guys got a lot to say, because boy, oh boy, so do I. We could have an entire hour-long episode just on student loan debt forgiveness and then the shenanigans that's going on with our education system and people like Randy Weingarten stepping up on the Supreme Court steps, screaming to the skies a bunch of nonsense. I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Bald Brad Show. If you did, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all our future content.